Hey there, Rednecks, Preppies, Redneck Preppies. It's me, the Redneck Preppy. How you doing today? Great? Good. So recently, I posted a video with my personal top 5 military rifle myths that annoy me, but that well, unfortunately, runs so much deeper. And here's another 5 myths which annoy me. Don't worry, this isn't going to be an ongoing series. Believe me, I know what happens when you string out a decent premise for too long. Yeah. Anyway, pitter patter. Let's get at her. Okay, so as long as I've been in the milsurp game, as the kids are fond of saying, the moment someone asks how they should clean their firearms after shooting corrosive ammunition, someone inevitably jumps in to say they use Windex because it breaks down the potassium chloride or sodium chloride left behind from corrosive primers. Now, when either of those two corrosive salts are combined with humidity, they basically turn into a superpowered rust storm in your rifle. So the Windex crowd, really any ammonia-based cleaner, will tell you that the ammonia in that cleaner breaks down the salts and flushes them away. Listen carefully. The ammonia may be breaking down those salts, but they aren't actually doing the heavy lifting. Here's the actual science, and I'm not talking about that Fauci science. Both potassium chloride and sodium chloride are what's called hygroscopic, meaning they attract and retain water. It also means that they dissolve in water. What's primarily working in those ammonia-based cleaners like Windex is the water, which is probably the largest component in them by percentage, not the ammonia. Using the exact same amount of water as you would Windex will net you pretty much the exact same result. Now, and in fact, any cleaner with water in it will pretty much do the exact same thing. A lot of people recommending cleaning out corrosive salts with hot water, mostly because it evaporates quickly, or soapy water. Go ahead, nothing wrong with either of them. I clean my rifles with Hoppy's number 9, and then I follow up with some gun oil, and I've never had an issue with rust after corrosive ammunition. Then again, I'm also an extraordinarily obsessive gun cleaner, and your mileage may vary if you go that route. So don't look at that as a recommendation as to how you should do it. But if you want to clean out your bores with Windex, knock yourself out. It's your money. I really don't care. Now, don't get me started on the stories of World War II Soviet soldiers urinating down their bores to clean out after they shot corrosive ammunition, because they ain't going to be touching that one. One corrosive ammo myth deserves another one, and this one basically states that after you've plowed through some bunch of the finest Eastern European or Chinese surplus corrosive ammunition, all you really need to do is shoot some non-corrosive ammunition to blow out those corrosive salts. Presto changeo rifle cleano. This is actually a weird one because on the face of it, it actually kind of does make sense. I've seen some people even run experiments doing this, leaving the rifle for months after they've done this, and then checking to see if any rust had formed. They reported success, although I had some issues with how they ran those experiments and how they actually checked for rust, specifically where they checked for rust. Additionally, Small Arms Review conducted their own experiment a couple years back, though admittedly they fired non-corrosive ammunition first to coat surfaces, with a layer of carbon to protect them from corrosive salts, rather than the other way around. They still saw rust, though. There's a link in the description to their results. To my way of thinking, if you shoot corrosive first and then non-corrosive, you're covering up those corrosive salts with carbon fouling, theoretically preventing or slowing down any ambient humidity from being sucked up by those salts. That said, eventually those salts and that humidity will make sweet love and birth rust in your rifle. It may take longer, but I think it's still going to happen. So I consider this a myth. Your mileage may vary, and if it's your firearm, if you want to take the chance, water or cleaner is a lot cheaper than any military surplus rifle. So up to you. I remember actually hearing this one during basic training, and apparently it still has legs. So the myth goes that the shockwave of a passing 50 caliber round is so powerful that if it goes within a foot of your head, it'll tear half your skull off. A more sedate version exclaims that within that same distance, it'll only tear away like the flesh of your arm as it passes by. Goodness, that's a load of bunk. Here's some more of that sciencey stuff that everyone loves these days. The 50 caliber bullet does actually generate a small shockwave when it breaks the sound barrier, but nowhere powerful enough to rip men to shreds. In fact, no less than the Mythbusters conducted an experiment back in June 2009 where they sent a 50 caliber bullet between rows of glass to see if the shockwave would break any of it. They used windows, wine glasses, cups, and light bulbs. Now you could break an incandescent light bulb just by looking at it, but the shockwave of a bullet didn't do anything. If that's not enough, Demolition Ranch conducted a similar experiment in 2016 and came up with the same result. Shockwave ain't doing nothing. There's a link in the description to that video. So no, that old military wives' tale is actually absolute nonsense. The good news is you still need to be hit by a 50 caliber round in order to be killed by it. The bad news is you were just hit by a 50 caliber round. Since the dawn of time, there are those that argue that 7.62 NATO and 308 Winchester are the exact same thing. Others demand recognition of the fact that 223 Remington and 5.56 millimeter are separated only by name. They are wrong and right. So this is a 2-for-1 and it's going to be a bit long. Anyway, let's deal with the 7.62 NATO 308 Winchester thing first. Externally, 7.62 NATO and 308 Win are virtually identical, mostly because the former, the 7.62, was using the latter, the 308, as its parent case. Now, as you'll see, the case of the military cartridge is marginally longer than its civilian parent, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, where they tend to be really different, is internally, as military brass is usually thicker, as in it has thicker walls, which means it reduces the capacity inside the cartridge, the brass case. So the same powder load, let's say 30 grains, generates higher pressures in 7.62 NATO compared to 308 Winchester because of that smaller internal space. Now, how much depends on the powder, but it can be several thousand PSIs. Now, also, you tend to see that the chambers of military rifles, which are designed to fire 7.62 NATO, have more generous headspace. Now, this is done generally to make feeding and extraction easier in semi and fully automatic rifles. This increased headspace, which is really a longer chamber essentially, is between the 6,000ths and 10,000ths of an inch. Now, that doesn't sound like much, but in the world of firearms, that's a fair bit of space. So a 308 Win round with its thinner walls could stretch out more in a rifle designed for 7.62 NATO, and you could see things like case head separation, ruptures, and the like. So in reality, the biggest difference between 308 Winchester and 7.62 NATO are the internals and the chamber of the rifle. Now, are they the same round? Kinda. Are they interchangeable? Mostly. It depends on the pressure generated by the powder load of the round, and it's something to keep in mind. A modern 308 Winchester rifle would have no problem firing either round. An older military rifle, think something like an M14, chambered in 7.62 NATO, that's firing 308 Winchester, could see a brass case that fails and damages the rifle's chamber, magazine, bolt face, or person behind the trigger. Now, the 223 556 thing. This is another where people are kind of sorta right and wrong at the same time. So there are two primary differences between the two. The first one is pressure. The 223 round comes in at about 55,000 psi. Obviously it depends on the powder load, but generally speaking, it's about 55,000. While the 556 rings at about 58,000 pounds psi. Now, secondly, although either round will chamber into a rifle designed for the other round, the difference in the rifle's lead plays an important role. Now, the lead of the barrel is the area in front of the chamber, but just before the rifling begins. For the 223 Remington, the lead is about 0.085 inches, while for 556, it's about 0.162 inches, or approximately double. Now, as I stated, 556 produces higher pressures, and if it's fired in a rifle designed for 223, the shorter lead in that chamber will further increase the pressure. Also, 556 rounds are made for the longer lead and may have the bullet seated differently. So if the bullet from a 556 round makes contact with the rifling in a chamber designed for 223, it might even yet further increase the pressure. The exact opposite, though, firing a 223 round in a 556 chamber is perfectly fine. You'll have no issues whatsoever. Either way, read the manual of your firearm if it's chambered in either 223 or 556. Some rifles are designed to fire both. Some are only designed to fire one. Listen to the manual in this case, because it's telling you the facts. So yeah, they're the same mostly, but not completely. Okay, here's another one that's probably been circulating since at least the Vietnam War, and that's so you can take your bog standard AK-47, bury it in the muddiest mud seen since the trenches of World War I, get it out of the mud, slap a magazine in it, start shooting like nothing ever happened. And I'd be willing to bet that the people who repeat this myth and variations thereof have never actually maintained a rifle in the field. Any soldier, past or present, can tell you that if you're not constantly on top of your rifles, cleaning and maintenance, pretty soon the only thing that can be used for, in weapon terms, is as a club. The reality of the AK-47 is that it's a rifle that's, at least was, manufactured with fairly loose tolerances, which is to say that the parts don't fit together with super precision. That's part of its strength, but it's also a weakness. So for those of you who are familiar with the rifle outside of Call of Duty, you know the damn thing's got holes all over the place. Holes where lovely things like dirt, mud, dust, and the tears of your enemies can get in and jam that thing up like nobody's business. Now, I realize that there were issues with the tests, but a few years ago, InRange tested both the AR and AK platforms in their infamous mud tests and found that the AK failed pretty badly, while the AR did pretty darn well. That's because the AR is a more closed-off system with tighter tolerances. Of course, that also means that when the AR gets jammed due to environmental factors, it can really jam. Whereas, the AK is theoretically easier to clean. At any rate, the AK is no less immune to getting fouled up due to foreign objects getting inside of the action, just like every other rifle on the planet. Yeah, so I probably stirred up our hornet's nest with some of those. That's, of course, though, why I get paid the big bucks to take the scorn. Agree or disagree with the myths? Argue it out in the comments section below. Have your own myths that annoy you? Comment section, my friends. At any rate, I hope you found the video to be vaguely informative and somewhat entertaining. I hope you have yourself a great day and may all of your shots ring true, and clean those firearms properly after shooting corrosive ammunition. Take care and bye-bye.